Hello and welcome everybody to my AFC West record prediction video. This is the third installment in my record prediction series where I have already done the AFC East and the AFC North. In this video, I'm going to break down each team in the AFC West and of course then give a record prediction. So let's get right into the video. Man, what happened to the Las Vegas Raiders in 2022? I had them winning 10 games last year. However, they went 6-11. They had a negative 23-point differential. And man, I thought they were going to be really good due to the Davante Adams trade, but their season was just not put together. Even with phenomenal season performances by Josh Jacobs, who had 1,600 rushing yards leading the league, Davante Adams finished third in the league in receiving yards and first in targets, and Max Crosby had a 12.5 sack season. The Raiders had a bad year through coaching with Josh McDaniels, Derek Carr undoubtedly having a down year, and free agent signings like Chandler Jones just not working out, as well as Hunter Renfrow falling off a cliff and Darren Waller getting injured. And unfortunately, their offseason didn't look any better. Franchise cornerstone Derek Carr signed a 4-year deal with the Saints. Jimmy Garoppolo got a way bigger contract than he should have gotten, and there's questions if he might even pass his physical, coming off of his broken ankle that ended his 2022 season. They tagged Josh Jacobs, signed Jacoby Myers to a 3-year deal, and traded away Darren Waller to the Giants. On paper, their offensive depth chart also looks very high-powered, with Josh Jacobs and Davante Adams. However, if you look at it for more than just a second, you realize how many flaws it actually has. How will Jimmy G perform outside of the 49ers system? Rookie Michael Mayer will likely become their tight end 1. But more importantly, looking at their offensive line, it's flat out terrible. It'll be the first year starting for Andre Jones and Alex Bars. And outside of Colton Miller, it's extremely weak. And their defensive depth chart isn't as inspiring either. Outside of Max Crosby, Chandler Jones, and Tyree Wilson, this defense has a great chance to be a bottom 5 unit in the league. They allowed the most points in the AFC last year. They could possibly once again repeat. Their secondary is extremely weak, their linebacking core is also very young, and they have nobody on the interior to stop the run. It's really just Max Crosby and now rookie Tyree Wilson on that D-line, as Chandler Jones really fell off in 2022. Their strength of schedule doesn't help them either, as they have the 10th hardest in the preseason. I would just really expect the Raiders to have simply a bad year. They don't have great coaching, and they really don't have a great roster. Outside of stars like Davante Adams and Josh Jacobs and Max Crosby, they're overall a bad team, and Jimmy Garoppolo is a major question mark for the season anyways. The roster's really young. They should start the rebuild. I think Josh McDaniels is firmly on the hot seat. I see the Raiders getting either 4, 5, or 6 wins at most. Speaking of a disappointing team in 2022, the Broncos may have been the most disappointing team from the 2022 NFL season. After trading for Russell Wilson and signing Nathaniel Hackett in the 2022 offseason, the Broncos looked like they were primed for a playoff spot in the AFC. However, the season fell flat on their face. They went 5-12. Russell Wilson had the worst year of his career. Nathaniel Hackett was fired 12 games into the season. The receiving core was a mess. The locker room was definitely a mess. The coaching was a massive mess. The season was so crazy that the Broncos at one point scored the least amount of points in the NFL, however, allowed the least amount of points in the NFL as well. With the Broncos having an overall great defense, especially good secondary and pass rush, they didn't allow a lot of points and kept them in most of games. However, the offense was so bad that they literally couldn't win any one-score games or any game in overtime, losing 3 times in overtime. However, coaching should hopefully no longer be an issue, as they traded for Sean Payton from the Saints for a first-round pick that was used this year for Brian Bresee. Outside of Sean Payton, their offseason moves were fine. They signed Ben Powers to a huge contract and overpaid heavily for Mike McGlinchey. Their biggest offseason loss was Jermont Jones signing with the Seahawks. However, they already have a really deep defensive line, so it's not that big of an issue. The first-round pick they used to acquire Sean Payton was the first-round pick from the Miami Dolphins for Bradley Chubb mid-season. Outside of the offensive line signings, their offense doesn't look a whole lot different from last year. Russell Wilson is still their quarterback, Javonte Williams is coming off of an ACL injury, and the wide receiver room relatively didn't change, outside of Judy, Sutton, Patrick, and Hamler. I'll let you know one thing that the Broncos are going to heavily do in 2023, and that's going to run the ball a lot. Javonte Williams is coming off of an ACL injury, however, Sean Payton loved to run the ball in New Orleans through power backs like Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara, and the signing of Ben Powers and Mike McGlinchey also point to the fact that they're going to run a lot. And also, Sean Payton wants to get the ball out of Russell Wilson's hands, or even let Russell Wilson run the ball himself. Although expect second-year player Greg Dulcich to break out in 2023. Sean Payton's been raving about him. He was great in his time played, and him and Jerry Jeudy should be the main targets for Russell Wilson. In my opinion, their defense is a top 5 unit in the NFL. It's strong all around, it has superpowers, and it also has depth. Their secondary is phenomenal with Pat Surtain and Justin Simmons. They have a phenomenal defensive line unit with Frank Clark, Baron Browning, Randy Gregory, and Nick Bitonio. The linebacking group should also be solid with Alex Singleton and Drew Sanders. Their strength of schedule should help a bit this year. They had one of the hardest strength of schedules last year, and it's moving back to 12 this year. But I think the Broncos end up having another mediocre season. It seems like Russell Wilson's career is slightly coming to an end. Javonte Williams, their leading rusher, is coming back from a massive ACL injury. Their defense should be a top 10, at most top 5 unit in the league. Their coaching should vastly improve with Sean Payton. But based on looking at the information we were given in 2022 based on the Broncos season, I don't really see how they can make the playoffs or overcome their woes in 2022. The Russell Wilson trade seems like it'll affect them until they start to rebuild. If you were to ask me my views on the Los Angeles Chargers, you'd get a very mixed review from me. I think that they have a lot of talent on their team. However, the way the roster is constructed confuses me. And the Chargers might have a bottom 10 coaching unit in the league and be a bottom 5 head coach with Brandon Staley. Brandon Staley was a defensive coordinator from the Rams. He was hired in 2021 and really hasn't done anything outside of being a terrible clock manager. And it seems there's a major issue with his coaching staff, and injuries happen a lot more than they really should. Last year, the Chargers were riddled with injuries. Many were season-ending, or many missed the majority of the season. Keelan Allen was out for 10 games with a hamstring injury. J.C. Jackson, who signed for $82 million last offseason, went out with a knee injury. Joey Bosa had a groin injury. Mike Williams was injured late in the season. Justin Herbert broke his ribs in week 3. Jalen Guyton tore his ACL. What else? Rashawn Slater tore his tricep. And injuries do happen, but I think it's the way that the Chargers handle a few of them. Keenan Allen was re-aggravating his injury basically every practice. They threw Justin Herbert the week after he broke multiple ribs and had cartilage damage. Brandon Staley didn't sit his starters after clinching the playoffs in week 18, which led to a Mike Williams ankle injury that made him miss the playoffs. And do not get me started about their offensive system with Joe Lombardi. Man, was it terrible. A bunch of curl routes 10 to 15 yards out with Austin Eckler in the flat, and Justin Herbert having to make something out of absolutely nothing. Thank God they were able to bring over Kellen Moore from the Cowboys, because I could not live in myself if I saw Justin Herbert waste another year of his career. Speaking of Justin Herbert, he just signed a 5-year, $262 million contract with the Chargers. Because the Chargers spent so much money last offseason, they couldn't really do anything this offseason outside of signing Eric Kendricks. There aren't many positive signs in my eyes to the roster construction for 2023. I don't think Austin Eckler is a great running back. It's very cool that he's this great fantasy player and that he can catch out of the backfield so easily. He gets all these targets, receptions, and touchdowns through the goal line. He's not very efficient, and maybe it's because of the pure amount of touches he gets. But Austin Eckler is severely overvalued for how little big plays he's able to generate. Keenan Allen athletically declined heavily in 2022. He couldn't burst in and out of routes like he used to. However, technically, he's still very sound, but he's out of his prime. I like Mike Williams, but he really is a one-trick pony at the wide receiver position. He really only catches jump balls. He has a very limited route tree, and he's not that effective after the catch. They drafted Quentin Johnson in the first round, and he also has a limited route tree. However, he is very athletic, and he is very good after the catch. They obviously have Justin Herbert, who is a top 5 talent at the quarterback position, and they have a good offensive line with Pro Bowlers like Rashawn Slater and Corey Linsley. Their defense also isn't very great. They allowed the 5th most points in the AFC. Joey Bosa's good, but their run defense is just not there at all. They lost their best linebacker in Drew Tranquill to the Chiefs. J.C. Jackson likely isn't going to return very well from his kneecap break. Khalil Mack is now going to be 32, but outside of Derwin James and Asante Samuel Jr., there really is no depth to the defense either. They're not helped a lot by their 14th hardest strength of schedule. However, if there's one thing that your team can have, it's an elite quarterback. Justin Herbert will continue to carry them through games, and I think this team is good enough to have a winning record, however clearly miss out on the playoffs. However, I can easily see them have a losing season, and there's a very good chance the Chargers could potentially have a losing season. However, Justin Herbert probably saves them a lot late in games, and they somehow pull out a winning season, but do not make the playoffs. Sorry about that extended rant about the Chargers. Let's move on to the Kansas City Chiefs, who of course won the Super Bowl this year, with Patrick Mahomes winning the regular season MVP as well. The Chiefs were likely the best or the second best offense in 2022, while losing their best or second best offensive threat in Tyreek Hill. Travis Kelce had another historical season, but the thing about the Chiefs is you can do literally anything with Patrick Mahomes. Any receiver will be elevated, but the Chiefs defense really surprised me in 2022. A lot of the young guys like Nick Bolton, L'Jarius Sneed, and their rookies Trent McDuffie, Jalen Watson, and of course Chris Jones had really good seasons, especially deep into the playoffs, and that improved defense allowed them to hold leads more effectively and gave the ability to the Chiefs offense to come back and give them more opportunities to do that. The Chiefs obviously are one of the best coached teams in the NFL. With head coach Andy Reid, offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy, and Steve Spagnuolo, we'll have to see how the Chiefs offense performs without Eric Bieniemy as he becomes the new Commanders offensive coordinator. But since Andy Reid is the play calling, I don't think it'll change that much. The biggest addition to the Chiefs season was signing Jawaan Taylor to a 4-year, $80 million deal. However, they did lose starting left tackle Orlando Brown Jr. and leading receiver Juju Smith-Schuster to the Bengals and Patriots respectively. But those offseason departures don't necessarily bother me because if you have Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce on your offense, that mixes in well with rookie Isaiah Pacheco. You're getting a full season's worth of Kadarius Toney, who you acquired midseason in a trade with the Giants, as well as second-year players like Justin Ross and Sky Moore, joining the receiver core also with Rashid Rice, as well as a top 3 offensive line unit in the NFL, with absolute studs like Joe Thuney, Creed Humphreys, and Trey Smith and Jawaan Taylor, as well as first-team All-Pro Chris Jones leading your defense, with young studs like Nick Bolton, Justin Reed, L'Jarius Sneed, Trent McDuffie, Jalen Watson, George Karlaftis, and you drafted edge rusher Felix Nduke-Uzoma in the first round of the 2023 NFL Draft. The Chiefs should cruise through the 2023 NFL season due to the relatively weak strength of schedule at 16. For the best team in the NFL to be saddled with the middle hardest strength of schedule, that's a pretty good sign that they're once again going to be a top team in the league. And that's what I have them doing. I have them going 14-3 and once again repeating as the #1 seed in the AFC East, getting that bye. As you can see on the left side, I see them flying through the first half of the season, but after clinching the 1 seed, give up a loss to the Bengals and the Chargers. I think there is a chance for them to reach 15 or 16 wins, but I see 14-3 being the most likely outcome for this season. To recap, I have the Kansas City Chiefs going 14-3 being the first seed, and the Chargers, Broncos, and Raiders all missing out on the playoffs, as the Chargers go 9-8, Broncos go 7-10, and the Raiders go 5-12. But that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts about this video. Make sure you catch up with the rest of the AFC record prediction videos. I have the AFC East and AFC North record prediction videos already up on my channel. Make sure you leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.